The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was bigger than 10 football fields put together. Thousands of alien beings filled the curved seats that went up to the ceiling like a giant bowl. The air buzzed with the sounds of different languages being translated by small devices that floated near each delegate's head. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the center of it all. His gray hair was cut short, and his blue uniform had seen better days. Next to him stood Captain Lisa Bennett, a woman in her 30s with brown hair pulled back tight. Her green eyes looked around the room, taking in every detail. Behind them were 3 more humans in matching uniforms. High above them, on floating platforms, sat the leaders of the 12 most powerful species in the galaxy. Each platform glowed with a different color light. The beings on them looked nothing like humans. Some had 6 arms, others had crystal skin that changed colors, and a few looked like giant lizards wearing fancy clothes. Morrison cleared his throat and spoke into the small microphone pinned to his chest. His voice echoed through the huge room. The human fleet is ready to join the fight against the Void Collective. Our ship will take whatever position you think is best. A sound like breaking glass filled the air. It was laughter, but not the kind that made you feel good. The sound came from the crystal being on the blue platform. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. Tell us again, human. What is the name of your most powerful? Warship? The crystal alien's translator made its words sound smooth and cold. Morrison's jaw got tight, but his voice stayed calm. The USS Daisy May. The laughter got much louder. It came from all over the room now. Alien beings pointed at the humans and made sounds that their translators turned into giggles and chuckles. A huge lizard creature on the red platform stood up. Its scales changed from green to yellow as it laughed. Daisy May? That sounds like the name of a farm animal or an old woman who bakes cookies. Captain Bennett felt her hands make fists at her sides. She thought about her own grandmother, who had taught her to shoot when she was 8 years old and had survived 3 wars. But she kept her mouth shut and let the Admiral handle this. The biggest alien in the room sat on the golden platform. It had 6 arms and skin that looked like it was made of metal. This was Fleet Admiral Zektar, the commander of all galactic military forces. When he spoke, everyone else got quiet. Humans are new to space war, Zektar said. His voice was deep like thunder. They name their ships after flowers and family members. They do not understand that war requires serious names. Names that make enemies afraid. A small alien that looked like a blue monkey jumped up and down on the green platform. My ship is called Death's Shadow. It strikes fear into all who hear its name. Another alien, this one tall and thin like a walking stick, pointed one of its 4 fingers at the humans. Our greatest battleship is named Cosmic Destroyer. Even saying its name makes planets surrender. The crystal being spoke again. Perhaps the humans will paint flowers on their ship's hull next. Maybe add some pretty curtains to the windows. More laughter filled the room. Some aliens were laughing so hard they had to hold onto their seats. The human delegation stood there and took it all. Morrison's face never changed expression, but the other humans looked angry. Commander Ryan Walsh, a young man with red hair, whispered to Lieutenant Sophie Drake, who stood next to him. If they knew what Daisy May really was, they wouldn't be laughing. Sophie nodded. She was a small woman with short black hair and sharp brown eyes. My great-aunt was named Daisy. She once fought off 5 robbers with just a baseball bat. Fleet. Admiral Zektar raised one of his 6 hands, and the room got quiet again. The human ship may join our formation, but it will stay in the back, far from the real fighting. We cannot risk our serious warships by having them near a ship with such a foolish name. Morrison stepped forward. The Daisy May will take whatever position you assign. We're here to help stop the Void Collective, not to argue about names." "Of course you are," said the crystal being. "Just try not to get in the way when the real warships do their work." A new voice joined the conversation. It came from a purple platform where sat an alien that looked like a giant octopus wearing a crown. "Tell us, humans, why did you choose such a silly name for your most important ship?" Morrison was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. "Daisy May Morrison was my grandmother. She was born on a farm in 1925. She lived through the Great Depression, World War II, and raised 7 children by herself. After my grandfather died, the room got a little quieter, but you could still hear some aliens making jokes to each other. She was 5 feet tall and weighed maybe 90 pounds, Morrison continued. But when the dust storms came and tried to bury her farm, she stood in her doorway with a shotgun and told them they weren't welcome. When hungry people came looking for food, she fed them even when she didn't have enough for her own family. When the government men came to take her farm for taxes, she made them tea and talked them out of it." Captain Bennett smiled a little. She had heard this story before, but it never got old. "She died when she was 93, Morrison said. "Never fired that shotgun at another person, never raised her voice at her children, never gave up on anything she thought was worth saving. So when we built our best ship, we named it after her. Because if something's worth protecting, you want Daisy May on your side." The room was quieter now, but not quiet enough. The crystal being made that breaking glass laugh again. "How touching. A warship named after a tiny old woman. I'm sure the Void Collective will be terrified." The lizard alien hissed with amusement. "Perhaps your ship's weapons shoot flower petals instead of lasers." More laughter filled the room. The human delegation stood there and took it all. But if the aliens had been paying attention, they would have noticed that none of the humans looked worried. They looked like people who knew something the rest of the room didn't. Single quotes T.Fleet. Admiral Ziktar stood up, and his metal skin caught the light from all the platforms. "The decision is made. The human ship will join the rear guard. For scouting duty only. When we reach the battle zone, they will stay far from the main fight. We cannot have our serious ships compromised by association with such amateur naming practices." Morrison nodded. "Understood, Fleet Admiral. The Daisy May will take her assigned position." As the meeting broke up, groups of aliens gathered too. "Continue making jokes about the human ship name." 2 young Zephyrian officers near the exit were making gestures like they were picking flowers and giggling about it. Captain Bennett walked past them and heard one say to the other, "Can you imagine going into battle in a ship named after someone's grandmother? How embarrassing." Bennett smiled and kept walking. She thought about the classified files locked in the Daisy May's computer core. Files that explained exactly what the ship really carried in her cargo holds. Files that told the true story of what human engineers had been building for the past 10 years. Let them laugh, she thought. Grandma Daisy had always said that the best surprises came in the smallest packages. And sometimes the most dangerous things in the universe looked perfectly harmless until you made the mistake of underestimating them. As the human delegation left the great hall, Admiral Morrison looked back at all the aliens who were still laughing and making jokes. He thought about his grandmother, standing in her farmhouse doorway with a shotgun, daring the dust storms to try and take what was hers. "They have no idea what's coming," he said quietly to Captain Bennett. She nodded. Grandma Daisy would have loved this. Outside the council building, the USS Daisy May floated in the orbital dock like a sleeping giant. Her hull was painted simple gray, with no fancy decorations or scary designs. She looked exactly like what she was supposed to look like, a plain, ordinary warship built by people who didn't know much about space combat. But appearances as Daisy Mae Morrison had taught her grandson many years ago, could be very deceiving indeed. 3 days after the meeting at the Galactic Council, the biggest fleet in galactic history dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 star system. 200 warships from 12 different species hung in the black emptiness of space like a wall of metal and weapons. Each ship was massive, covered in armor, and bristling with enough firepower to destroy entire planets. Captain Lisa Bennett stood on the bridge of the USS Daisy Mae, watching the sensor readings on her main screen. Her ship looked tiny compared to the alien vessels around them. The Altarian flagship was 10 times bigger than the Daisy Mae, and the Corvin battle cruisers were covered in spikes and scary decorations that were meant to frighten enemies. "Sensors are picking up something strange, Captain," said Lieutenant Sophie Drake from her station. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panel, but her face looked confused. "The readings don't make sense." Commander Ryan Walsh looked up from his engineering console. "Captain, our instruments are detecting massive energy signatures, but they're not coming from any kind of ship we understand." Bennett walked over to the main view screen. What she saw made her stomach feel cold. Where the 4th planet of the Fin Kepler system should have been, there was nothing. Not empty space, not debris from a destroyed world, but actual nothing. It was like someone had taken a giant eraser and wiped that part of the universe clean. "Communications, patch me through to Fleet Admiral Zektar," Bennett ordered. The metal-skinned alien's face appeared on the screen. Behind him, could see other alien officers running around looking scared. "Human Captain, are you seeing this?" "Yes, sir. Where did the planet go?" Zektar's 6 arms moved nervously. "We don't know. Our long-range sensors showed a planet there yesterday. Now there's nothing, not even dust." Suddenly, alarms started going off on every ship in the fleet. Drake's voice was tight with fear. "Captain, sensors are detecting incoming contacts. But they're not like anything in our databases." On the main screen, shapes began to appear out of the emptiness. But they weren't ships in any way that made sense. They looked like holes in space itself, dark tears in the fabric of reality that moved. With purpose. Where they passed, stars went out. Not exploded, not dimmed, but simply stopped existing as if they had never been there at all. "How many contacts?" Bennett asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Double quotes, 12. "No, 15. Captain, the number keeps changing. It's like they're creating more of themselves as they move." Fleet Admiral Zektar's voice came over the Fleet Communications channel. "All ships, battle stations. We are facing the Void Collective. Prepare for combat." The alien warships began to spread out into attack formation. The massive Altarian flagship moved forward, its weapons charging with bright blue energy. The crystal ships of the Zephyrians started to glow like giant diamonds. The Corvin vessels extended their spike-covered hulls and prepared to fire their famous planet-killer cannons. Bennett watched as the most powerful weapons in the galaxy prepared to face an enemy that shouldn't exist. "Commander Walsh, what are our sensors telling us about these things?" Walsh's face was pale as he read his instruments. "Captain, they're not operating under normal physics. Whatever those things are, they're changing the rules of reality around them. Our computers can't even figure out how fast they're moving because they're not moving through space in any way we understand." The first shots of the battle lit up the darkness. The Altarian flagship fired a spread of quantum torpedoes that could punch through any known armor. The bright missiles streaked toward the nearest void ship, their nuclear warheads ready to explode with the power of small suns. But when the torpedoes reached the dark shape, they simply disappeared. Not destroyed, not deflected, but gone as if they had never been fired at all. "What happened to our weapons?" Zektar's voice crackled over the communications channel. "Drake, checked her sensor readings twice before answering. "Sir, the torpedoes didn't explode or get destroyed. According to our instruments, they never existed in the first place." A chill ran through Bennett's spine. "You mean the enemy deleted them from reality?" "That appears to be correct, Captain." The void ships began to move closer to the fleet, and Bennett could see the effect they had on space around them. Stars flickered out of existence as the dark shapes passed by them. Empty space itself seemed to ripple and tear like fabric being ripped apart. The Corvin heavy cruiser Serpent's Fang fired its planet-killer cannon, a weapon that could crack continents in half. A massive beam of energy shot toward one of the void ships. Bright enough to hurt your eyes if you looked directly at it. The beam touched the edge of the dark shape and simply stopped. Not blocked, not absorbed, but ceased to exist the moment. It entered the area around the enemy vessel. "Fleet Admiral," Bennett called out, "conventional weapons aren't working. The enemy is operating outside normal physics." But Zektar wasn't listening. His flagship was firing everything it had at the void ships, and every shot was disappearing the moment it got close to the targets. Other alien vessels followed his lead, filling space with weapons fire that vanished into nothing. "Captain," Walsh called out, his voice shaking, "3 of our escort ships just disappeared." Bennett looked at her tactical display. 3 Zephyrian cruisers that had been part of their formation were simply gone. Not destroyed in explosions, not broken apart by enemy fire, but edited out of existence as completely as if they had never been built. The dark shapes of the Void Collective began to spread out, reaching toward the assembled fleet like the fingers of some cosmic monster. Where they touched, ships ceased to exist. Not just the ships, but the people inside them, the metal they were made from, even the light that had been reflecting off their hulls. "All ships, retreat!" Zektar's voice was filled with panic. "Full reverse. Get away from those things. They..." Most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, species that had conquered stars and built empires that lasted for millions of years, turned and ran in terror from an enemy that could erase them from existence itself. But as the alien vessels began to pull back, their engines straining to put distance between themselves and the reality-eating monsters, Admiral Jake Morrison's voice came over a private channel to the Daisy May. "Captain Bennett, hold your position." Bennett felt her heart start beating faster. "Sir?" "It's time to see if Grandma Daisy's lessons work against things that don't believe in reality." Bennett looked around her bridge at her crew. Walsh was already moving toward a control panel that most alien engineers had never seen before. Drake was pulling up weapon systems that weren't in any galactic database. They had trained for this moment, hoped they would never need to use what they had learned. But now the time had come. "All crew, prepare for reality anchor deployment," Bennett announced over the ship's internal communication system. Around them, the most powerful species in the galaxy fled in terror from an enemy that could rewrite the laws of physics. But the humans in their grandmother-named ship held their ground, preparing to deploy a weapon that shouldn't exist, built on theories that defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about science. The Void Collective's attention turned toward the lone human vessel that dared to remain in their presence. The dark shapes began to move toward the Daisy May, their reality-distorting fields, reaching out like hungry mouths ready to erase another ship from existence. But Captain Bennett stood steady on her bridge, her hand hovering over a control that could change everything. Around her, the crew prepared to find out if a farmer's daughter from 1925 had taught her grandson the most important lesson in the universe. The bridge of the USS Daisy May was quiet, except for the low hum of machines and the beeping of warning alarms. Captain Lisa Bennett stood in the center of it all, watching the dark shapes of the Void Collective move toward her ship like hungry shadows. Behind her, the most powerful fleet in galactic history was running away as fast as their engines could carry them. Distance to enemy contact? Bennett asked. Lieutenant Sophie Drake looked at her sensors, though the readings kept changing in ways that hurt her head to think about. 2 minutes until they reach us, Captain. Maybe less. The void ships don't move through space the same way we do. Commander Ryan Walsh was working at a control panel that looked different from everything else on the bridge. The metal was darker. The buttons were arranged in patterns that seemed almost magical, and strange symbols glowed softly around the edges. This was the control station for humanity's greatest secret. Reality anchor status? Bennett asked. Walsh's hands moved over controls that had taken him 5 years to learn how to use. Quantum field generators are online, Captain. Temporal stabilizers are locked and ready. The device is drawing power from our main reactor and both backup systems. Bennett opened a communication channel to Admiral Jake Morrison, who was watching the battle from the fleet command ship that was now several million kilometers away and moving farther every second. Admiral, we're about to find out if Dr. Helen Carter was right about everything. Morrison's voice came back calm and steady, the way it always did when things got dangerous. She was right, Captain. 15 years of impossible mathematics don't lie. Deploy when you're ready. Deep inside the Daisy May, behind doors that required 3 different keycards and a retinal scan to open, the reality anchor began to wake up. It was humanity's most carefully guarded secret, built by the smartest people on Earth, working on theories that alien scientists said were stupid and impossible. Dr. Helen Carter had started with a simple question that no one else had thought to ask. If reality could be changed, then reality could be changed back. If the Void Collective could make things stop existing, then maybe something could make existence stronger and more real than it was before. The reality anchor wasn't just a weapon. It was a machine that could take human understanding of how the universe worked and force that understanding onto any area of space. It could make the laws of physics so strong and real that nothing could break them or ignore them. 90 seconds to contact, Drake announced. Her voice was steady, but Bennett could see the fear in her eyes. The void ships are starting to affect our sensors just by being close to us. Bennett took a deep breath and looked around at her crew. These were good people, smart people, brave people who had volunteered for a mission that might save the galaxy or might get them all erased from existence. All hands, this is the captain, she said over the ship's communication system. In 60 seconds, we're going to do something that has never been done before. We're going to prove that reality is stronger than the things that want to destroy it. This is what we trained for. The reality anchor reached full startup power with no dramatic lights or loud noises. Instead, space around the Daisy May simply became more real. The stars looked brighter and more solid. The empty space between them felt stronger, like it was made of something tougher than vacuum. The laws of physics that humans understood became the only laws that mattered in a growing bubble around the ship. Anchor deployed, Walsh called out. The field is expanding at light speed. The effect spread outward like a wave of absolute reality. And when it reached the Void Collective ships, something impossible happened. The tiers in space-time began to close. The dark shapes that had been holes in the universe started to become solid, real things that followed the same rules as everything else. For the first time since the battle began, the enemy ships appeared on the Daisy May's sensors as actual objects instead of gaps in reality. They were huge crystalline structures that pulsed with dark energy, strange and alien, but real and solid and vulnerable. It's working. Drake's voice was filled with amazement. Captain, the enemy vessels are being forced into normal space-time. They're showing up as real physical objects on our sensors. Bennett opened a communication channel to the entire fleet. All vessels, this is Captain Bennett of the USS Daisy May. The enemy is now operating within normal physics. Repeat, the Void Collective ships are vulnerable to conventional weapons. The response was immediate. Ships that had been running away turned around and began heading back toward the battle. Weapons that had been useless moments before now had targets they could actually hit. The Altarian flagship fired another spread of quantum torpedoes. This time, when they reached the nearest void ship, they exploded in brilliant nuclear fire that lit up the darkness like a small sun. The crystalline structure cracked and began to break apart. Direct hit. Came Zektar's voice over the communication. Channel. Their shields are down to 60%. All across the battle zone, alien weapons began to find their targets. The crystal ships of the Zephyrians fired beams of pure energy that sliced through Void Collective hulls like knives through paper. The Corvin planet killer cannons punched holes completely through the enemy vessels. But victory came with a price that only the crew of the Daisy May could see. Walsh's control panel was lighting up with red warning lights as the reality anchor consumed more and more power. "Captain," Walsh called out, "the anchor is burning through our energy reserves faster than we calculated. We can maintain the field for maybe 8 more minutes before we lose main power." Bennett nodded grimly. 8 minutes to end a war that could have consumed the entire galaxy. She opened a private channel to Admiral Morrison. "Admiral, we have a limited window. Whatever we're going to do to finish these things off, we need to do it now." Morrison's voice came back with the sound of orders being given in the background. "Understood, Captain. All ships are moving to attack positions. Can you give us those 8 minutes?" "We'll give you what we can, sir." But even as she spoke, Bennett could see on her tactical display that the Void Collective wasn't giving up. The enemy ships were adapting to being trapped in normal physics. Their crystalline hulls were shifting and changing, trying to find new ways to break the laws of reality, even while being held inside them. "Captain," Drake called out from her. "Station. The enemy is trying to generate new reality distortions. They're fighting against our field." Walsh's console showed more red lights every second. "Power levels dropping faster now, Captain. The void ships are putting pressure on the anchor field. It's like they're trying to push back against reality itself." Bennett made a decision that would have seemed crazy to any alien commander. She had seen her grandmother make the same kind of choice when Bennett was a little girl, standing in the doorway of their house during a tornado, refusing to let the storm take what belonged to her family. "All crew, prepare for emergency protocol," Bennett announced. "We're taking the reality anchor to maximum power." Walsh looked up from his failing console. "Captain, that will burn out every system on the ship. We'll be dead in space." Bennett looked at the tactical display, showing dozens of Void Collective ships being destroyed by weapons that could finally reach them. Better dead in space than letting these things loose on the galaxy. "Do it." Walsh's hands moved to controls he had hoped never to use. "Aye, Captain." Implementing maximum power protocol. The USS Daisy May began to die around them as every bit of power flowed into the reality anchor. But the field it created blazed like a star, locking every enemy ship so completely into normal physics that their exotic matter structures began to collapse under the weight of actually existing Dot in the growing darkness of her failing ship. "Captain." Bennett smiled as she watched the last of humanity's enemies fall to weapons that could finally touch them. Sometimes, she thought, the most important thing you could do was hold the line long enough for others to finish the job. Outside, the reality anchor burned brighter than a star, proving that some things were too real to ever be erased. The USS Daisy May was dying. Power conduits exploded in showers of sparks throughout the ship as the reality anchor pulled every last bit of energy from every system. The lights went out deck by deck, leaving only the red glow of emergency power. That was getting weaker by the minute. Captain Lisa Bennett held onto her command chair as another explosion shook the bridge. Around her, her crew worked in the dim red light, their faces lit only by the glow of computer screens that flickered on and off as power systems failed one by one. "Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12, Lieutenant Sophie Drake reported, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "We're losing atmosphere fast. Emergency bulkheads are sealing, but we've lost contact with engineering sections 3 and 4. Commander Ryan Walsh's control station went completely dark as the main power grid finally gave up. That's it, Captain. The reality anchor is running on battery power now. We have maybe 2 minutes left before even that runs out." Through the failing view screen, Bennett could see the battle raging around them. The alien fleet that had been running away was now destroying Void Collective ships as fast as they could target them. Explosions lit up the darkness like fireworks as crystalline enemy. Hulls cracked and shattered under the assault of weapons that could finally reach them. But Bennett was looking at something else on her tactical display, something that made her blood run cold. Deep in the heart of the enemy formation, one void ship was different from all the others. It was bigger, more complex, and it was pulsing with dark energy that even the reality anchor couldn't completely suppress. "Commander Walsh," she called out through the noise of failing systems. "What's that large ship doing?" Walsh squinted at his mostly dead instruments. "Captain, it's trying to break free from our reality field. Whatever that thing is, it's not like the others. It's fighting back against our anchor." Admiral Jake Morrison's voice crackled through the damaged communication system. "Bennett, your ship is falling apart. Get your people to the escape pods. You've done more than enough." But Bennett wasn't listening to evacuation orders. She was watching the readings on her screen that showed the big void ship starting to tear. Holes in reality again, even with the anchor running at full power. If that thing broke free, it could bring more void ships through the tears. The battle they had almost won could become a disaster that would consume the entire galaxy. "Commander Walsh," she said quietly, "can you give me one more power surge? Just for 30 seconds? Walsh looked at her like she had lost her mind. "Captain, there's no power left to give. We're running on emergency batteries that are almost dead. What about life support?" The question hung in the air for a moment. Drake looked up from her station, understanding immediately what the captain was thinking. "Captain, if we shut down life support, we'll have about 15 minutes of air left in the ship. But it would give us enough power for one final surge," Walsh said slowly. "A surge that might be enough to lock that big ship permanently into normal spacetime." Bennett looked around at her crew. These were people who had families waiting for them back on Earth. People who had signed up to serve their species, not to die in the cold darkness of space. But they were also people who understood what was at stake. "It's your choice," she said simply. "We can evacuate now and hope the fleet can handle that big ship on their own. Or we can finish what we started." Drake was the first to speak. "My little brother is 8 years old, Captain. He wants to be a spaceship captain when he grows up. I want to make sure there's still a galaxy for him to explore." Walsh nodded. "My wife is pregnant with our first child. I want that kid to live in a universe where reality means something." The third bridge officer, Lieutenant Tony Garcia, had been quiet through most of the battle. Now he spoke up. "Captain, my grandmother always told me that the bravest thing you can do is stand between your family and danger. The whole galaxy is our family now." Bennett felt her throat get tight. These were good people, the kind of people her own grandmother had raised her to be. People who understood that some things were worth any sacrifice. "All right then," she said. "Commander Walsh, shut down life support and reroute all power to the reality anchor. Let's show that thing what Grandma Daisy would have done." The air recycling systems stopped humming. The artificial gravity got a little weaker. The temperature began to drop as the heating systems went offline. But the reality anchor blazed brighter than ever before, creating a field of absolute reality that reached out across the entire battle zone. The big void ship, the one that had been fighting against the anchor field, suddenly stopped pulsing. Its dark energy patterns flickered and went out. The tiers in space-time that it had been trying to create snapped shut like doors slamming closed. "It's working," Drake called out, though her breath was starting to show in the cold air. "The large vessel is completely locked into normal physics now. It can't generate any more reality distortions." The alien fleet didn't waste the opportunity. Every ship in the combined force turned their weapons on the big void vessel. Quantum torpedoes, energy beams, and planet-killer cannons all focused on the one target that had been the greatest threat, the crystalline structure of the enemy. Flagship began to crack under the assault. Pieces of its hull broke away and dissolved into nothing as the exotic matter that held it together finally gave up the fight against reality. With a flash of light that could be seen from 1,000,000 kilometers away, the last and greatest of the Void Collective ships exploded into dust. "All enemy contacts destroyed," Drake reported, her voice getting weaker as the oxygen in the bridge got thinner. "The Void Collective fleet has been completely eliminated." Bennett opened a communication channel to Admiral Morrison. "Admiral, mission accomplished. The reality anchor is burned out, but the threat is over." Morrison's voice came, back heavy with emotion. "Understood, Captain. Fleet rescue ships are on their way to your position. Hold tight." But Bennett knew they wouldn't make it in time. The air was getting too thin to breathe, and the cold was making her fingers numb. Around her, her crew was still working at their stations, making sure the ship's sensors kept recording everything for the rescue teams to find. "Captain," Walsh said softly, "do you think we did the right thing?" Bennett looked out at the empty space where the Void Collective had been. Stars were beginning to reappear as reality reasserted itself in the areas where the enemy ships had been erasing existence. The galaxy was safe. Billions of people on thousands of worlds would live to see another day because of what they had done here. "I think," she said, "that Grandma Daisy would be proud." As the USS Daisy May drifted powerless through space, her crew sat in the growing darkness and watched the rescue ships racing toward them. They had saved the galaxy by refusing to let reality itself be destroyed, and they had done it in a ship named after a farmer's daughter who had taught them that love was stronger than any storm. Outside, the stars shone brighter than ever before, solid and real and permanent in a universe where existence had been proven to be the most powerful force of all. 3 weeks after the battle that saved the galaxy, Admiral Jake Morrison walked into the Great Hall of the Galactic Council for the second time. But everything was different now. The curved seats that went up to the ceiling were filled with alien beings who stood up when he entered. Not one of them was Laughing Dot. The representatives of 12 species rose together, a mark of respect that had never been shown to any human before. The crystal beings who had made fun of the Daisy May's name now glowed with colors that meant honor in their culture. The lizard creatures who had joked about painting flowers on human ships kept their scales in patterns that showed deep respect. Captain Lisa Bennett walked beside Morrison, her left arm still in a sling from the injuries she had gotten when the Daisy May lost power. The rescue ships had reached her crew with only minutes to spare, pulling them from a ship that was nothing but a frozen metal shell drifting in space. But they had all survived, and the galaxy was safe because of what they had done. The Zephyrian delegate who had laughed the loudest at the first meeting approached Morrison with movements that looked almost like bowing. When it spoke, its voice came through the translator, sounding humble and quiet. "Admiral Morrison, the Council has studied the battle recordings from every ship in the fleet. We have seen what your vessel accomplished. We owe your species more than an apology. We owe you our lives." Morrison's weathered face showed no anger, no desire for revenge. "No apology needed, delegate. We all learned something important that day. Fleet Admiral Zektar, the massive six-armed being who commanded all galactic military forces, stepped down from his platform for the first time in anyone's memory. His metal skin caught the light as he moved, and when he spoke, his voice was filled with something that sounded like wonder. "Admiral Morrison, our scientists have been studying the technical data from your reality anchor. We must ask, how did humanity develop such technology? Our greatest minds have been working on the problem of reality manipulation for thousands of years, and we achieved nothing." Morrison smiled, the first real smile he had shown since the battle. "The same way. My grandmother survived the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression, Admiral, by understanding that sometimes you have to plant yourself like a tree and refuse to let go of what's real, no matter how hard the storm tries to blow you away." A small alien that looked like a blue monkey raised one of its four hands. "But Admiral, we do not understand. Your technology is based on principles that our science says are impossible. How can belief make reality stronger?" Captain Bennett stepped forward. "It's not about belief, delegate. It's about understanding what's worth protecting. The reality anchor works because it's powered by the strongest force in human nature, the refusal to let the people you love be erased from existence." The Corvan ambassador, whose scales were showing deep purple patterns of respect, asked the question that had been puzzling alien strategists for weeks. "Admiral Morrison, your species names its most powerful weapons after family members. Your military protocols carry the names of grandmothers and farmers. We have studied your history, and we find this pattern everywhere." "Why?" Morrison looked around the great hall, at all the alien faces watching him with genuine curiosity instead of mockery. "Every species in this galaxy has forgotten something important," he said. "You name your ships after conquest and fear, after power and domination. But humans remember that the strongest things in the universe aren't weapons or armor." He gestured to a holographic display that showed the rebuilt USS Daisy May floating in the orbital shipyard. "The strongest things are the connections between people. The love that makes a 5-foot-tall grandmother stand in her doorway with a shotgun when the storm comes. The willingness to sacrifice everything to protect something precious." Commander Ryan Walsh, now wearing the uniform of a fleet engineer, spoke up from the human delegation. "The reality anchor works because it's based on the most basic human truth. Some things are too important to let go of, even when the entire universe is trying to take them away." Lieutenant Sophie Drake, promoted to commander after the battle, added quietly, "We name our ships after people who taught us those lessons because we never want to forget why we fight." The chief administrator of the Galactic Council, an ancient being whose species had ruled the stars for millions of years, stood slowly when shaking legs. "The Council hereby grants humanity full membership in the Galactic Federation, with all rights and responsibilities. Furthermore, we formally request that human naval doctrine be integrated into our combined defense strategies." As the formal ceremony continued, Morrison heard two young alien officers talking near the back of the hall. But instead of making jokes, their voices carried amazement and respect. "Did you hear what the reality anchor really does?" one asked. "It doesn't just lock space into normal physics. It forces the universe to remember that love and sacrifice are more real than any cosmic horror." The other replied, "I still don't understand how they named their most powerful warship after someone's grandmother." Morrison smiled as he walked past them. "Maybe that's exactly why it worked," he said quietly. Later, as the human delegation prepared to leave, the Zephyrian delegate approached Bennett with something that might have been embarrassment in a crystal being. "Captain Bennett, I must ask, the woman your ship was named after, what was she truly like?" Bennett looked out through the great windows of the council building, where the new USS Daisy May hung in orbit. She was bigger than the original, with better armor and more powerful weapons, but she still carried the same name painted on her, hull in letters that could be seen from space. Daisy May Morrison was 90 pounds of pure stubborn, Bennett said with a smile. She fed hungry strangers when her own family didn't have enough food. She stared down dust storms and government, agents and the Great Depression itself. She never gave up on anything she thought was worth saving. The alien delegate was quiet for a moment. "And you believe this made her powerful?" "I believe it made her real," Bennett replied. "Real in a way that couldn't be erased or forgotten or destroyed. And when the universe itself was trying to erase everything we cared about, that kind of reality was the only weapon that could save us." As the human delegation left the council building, they could see their ship waiting for them in the orbital dock. The USS Daisy May gleamed with new quantum armor and carried weapons that could protect the galaxy from any threat. But painted on her hull, in simple letters that any child could read, were the words that had become the motto of the human fleet. "Some things are too precious to let go." The galaxy had stopped laughing at human naming conventions. They had learned that sometimes the most powerful weapons came wrapped in the simplest packages, and that a ship named after a farmer's daughter could save the universe by refusing to let reality itself be. Destroyed. Admiral Morrison looked up at his ship and whispered a quiet thank you to a woman who had died before humanity ever reached the stars, but whose greatest lesson had become their greatest strength. In the end, they had learned that the most powerful anchor in any storm wasn't made of metal or energy, but of love so strong it could hold the fabric of reality together when everything else was falling apart. The universe was safe, and it would remember forever the day that human stubbornness proved stronger than the void itself.